how are you? Welcome to or back to my channel. So excited you're here because today we are finally doing my May reading wrap up. I actually only read 5 books in May, which is just fine. May just happened to be a slower month. Just had a lot going on. But the books I did read, I had a really good time with. So yeah, let's get into it. I'm going to have them in order. I'm going to save my favorite for last, but I enjoyed every single one of these books. They were a good time. First one was sent to me by the author, and that was 20 Tales of Terror by Jordan Bryant. So I believe he did his own art. This is the cover art, and there's art in every story as well. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, this is geared more toward probably a younger audience, like I would say teen to maybe young adults. And there were, it's 20 Tales of Terror, so there are 20 short stories in this. Most of them are, 2 to 4 pages, but toward the end they get a little bit longer. This reminded me of, when I was a kid and my cousins and I would all sit around a campfire and we would take turns telling stories to see who could tell the scariest story. That's what this book reminded me of. It was kind of nostalgic for me, and it was just a really good time. My favorite one was definitely The Liver Bandit, and I can't tell you why, but that one really caught me by surprise and kind of made me giggle a little bit, but it was also a little spooky too. And some of these stories are more, a little childlike in their spookiness, but there are a lot of them that are a lot more sinister and took it farther than I expected as well. And there's even a unique take on the Bloody Mary story. So this was a good time, very nostalgic, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. Then I read Don't Fear the Reaper by J.C. Murphy. The author sent me this book. She sent it to me like a month or so ago. I'm just now getting to it. Anyways, this is a 2-part book. The first part, we follow Victor. Victor is a college student. He's having a really hard time. He's struggling with depression and substance abuse. And yeah, he's just having a really tough time. But he comes across this cult and he sneaks into this ritual that they're having. He's kind of curious. But anyways, he sneaks into this ritual where there's a botched summoning. They really mess up royally, and they botch a summoning and they inadvertently bring about the end of days. So yeah, kind of wrong place, wrong time. And now the Grim Reaper, who is a female, how cool is that, Nora, needs his help to exorcise a bunch of demons because this cult, these idiots, have unleashed hell on earth basically. So yeah, Nora needs Victor's help now. And so the first part of this, you have this whole dynamic between Nora and Victor, and it's just a lot of, wit and just a lot of fun banter between the two of them. I really enjoyed that. And I really, really wanted to see more of Nora. Like, there wasn't enough of Nora in this book. I really wanted to see more of her. She was a lot of fun. And that banter, because honestly, I was kind of bored with Victor in the beginning. But then when Nora showed up, I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. I was really into it. And my favorite part of this book were the females, because there was so much badass female energy in this book. And then part 2, we follow, not Victor, but Vincent. And it's over 100 years later, and the demons have basically taken over Earth at this point. It's dystopian, and they have taken over Earth. They have pretty much possessed most of the humans. There are only a few humans left, and Vincent is one of them. And Vincent's father, who is a jackass, by the way, he has sent Vincent out to find more humans to join his father's flock. But he gets distracted. Vincent gets distracted. And because there's, something, well, first of all, I gets distracted because he runs into Sophie. And Sophie's this scrappy, tough, she's not a damsel in distress. She very clearly does not need a man's help. But he runs into Sophie, and, there's that wit and banter between those two now. But also, Vincent gets distracted because something is pulling him in another direction. There's this unexplainable pull. And I'll read you this part of the back because I'm trying not to give anything away. But it says, Vincent sets his eyes to the north of their humble camp in Old Pennsylvania, following an irresistible pull. What is he searching for? Who is calling to him from every shadow? And why is she so sad? Vincent will find that death is not always the end. So yeah, part 2 is wildly different than part 1. It's a wildly different vibe. Character development was really good in this. I thought all the characters were really nicely done. It did take me a little bit to figure out what was going on in part 2, but once I had it, like, I was back in it. Like, I was once I had it, it had my full attention once again. And yeah, I had to know what was coming. I had to know what was next. Also, there were a lot of very exciting fight scenes in this. There was a lot of action and fighting scenes throughout the whole thing. And while there was a lot of flirting in this, it didn't get spicy or anything, which I appreciated. I don't mind some spice every now and then. I'm not a romance girly or anything like that. There was some flirting and some banter, and I did really enjoy the banter. I loved that. So yeah, it's a dark fantasy. It's not really horror. Even though there are some spooky elements to it, it's more of a dark fantasy. And yeah, I had a good time with it. Next up is The Ouija Man by N.P. Kniffy. I'm really terrible with pronunciation, so I apologize if I got that wrong. This is another one that was sent to me by the author. Look how cool this cover is. I like it. And I like that it's matte, it's not all glossy. I kind of love that. Anyways, really enjoyed this one as well. I'm going to read you what it's about. Forced by his publisher to deliver a fresh manuscript by the end of the year, author Rick Rooney retreats to a secluded cottage in the west of Ireland in search of inspiration. After a night of dabbling with a spirit board at the local pub, strange events begin to unfold at the cottage, while a menacing figure lurks in the trees outside. When Rick digs deeper into the area's dark history, he makes a chilling discovery about a local family, a devastating fire, and a centuries-old curse. Has Rick disturbed an ancient evil, and who or what is stalking him now? So, reading reviews on this, a lot of people said that it was super scary. I don't agree. I felt like this was more cozy than scary. I didn't get scary vibes at all from this. But I may be a little desensitized because I read so much horror. But to me, this was not scary. There was lots of Irish folklore, which I loved, and ghosts and fairies. So, and I also loved getting fairies in a more sinister light. There's not enough of that because a lot of times fairies, like, you see them as more fun and cutesy a lot of times. I loved that they were dark and disturbing in this. This book was very atmospheric. It was foggy and dark. Also, if you're a mood reader, this would be great in the fall or winter time because it was very like chilly and foggy and just very moody. So the atmosphere was perfect. The pacing was perfect as well, and it kept me guessing until the very end. I did not have everything figured out, and that I love. I love that I couldn't guess what was going on. So yeah, overall, I felt like this book was very well written and had excellent character development. I would definitely read more from this author, and I really enjoyed it. Next book I read was 12 Residents Dreaming by William Polly III. This was a 5-star read. It was sent to me by the author. Yeah, this was so good. I was surprised, and this cover art is really cool as well. Let me tell you what it was about. So Anacoy Martin is shipwrecked in the middle of the ocean. He's floating on a raft at sea, and he finds the 8th block tower in the middle of the ocean. And within that tower is a graveyard that's underwater, and in the graveyard he finds 12 bodies. Well, the skulls of the bodies, when he puts his fingers in the eye sockets, he's able to see their whole stories. So yeah, and each of these stories within this book is the stories of these 12 bodies when he puts his fingers into the eye sockets. How wild is that, first of all? I mean, the imagination of this guy is amazing. So yeah, I was absolutely transfixed. I read this in one sitting because I just could not stop. It was so wildly imaginative. It was unreal. um, like, I don't even know how to put into words how unreal this book was. It was just wild, and I absolutely loved it. It's part of a series, but it could be read as a standalone. With that being said, though, I am going to go back and get every single one of these books and probably everything that he's ever written, because that's how much I loved it, and that's how addicted I am to his writing style at this point. Like, I can't even explain his writing style. It's just so unique. Also, all of the characters are very well thought out and very unique. They had their own, every single one of them had their own unique voices, and it also amazed me of how much character development he was able to fit into each of these stories. Um, I can only imagine what he would do with a full novel instead of short stories, because yeah, he fits so much into each of these stories. Another funny thing, whenever he sent me the book, he'd asked me, he messaged me and asked, hey, would you be willing to review this? And he kind of told me about it, and I'm like, yeah, that sounds really interesting. So he sent it to me, and then he messaged me and said, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, I just saw your review policy, and I see that animal cruelty is something that you really don't like to read about, and you don't have to read it. I'm so sorry, I didn't realize, because there's a story in here about bugs, and there's some pretty bad things that they do to these bugs. And I was like, no, it's fine, I'll read it. It's not like a huge, like, I don't like to read it, but it's fine. Like, and bugs, like, it's not as big a deal as like dogs or whatever. I'll still read it. And funny thing is, the story in here with the bugs happened to be my favorite one, and it's called Killing Teddy. And there are some pretty gross things involving bugs in that one, but that was my favorite one of all of these. It was freaking nuts and wild, and I loved it. Every story in here was very descriptive. And yeah, William Pauly III is a creative genius, and I cannot wait to read every book he's ever written. 5 stars. Just go get this book immediately and read it, because it's fever dreamy and weird. If you love weird, wild horror, just get it. And the last one is The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. I read this one for my in-person book club that I host. A couple of the girls recommended this because we really wanted a creature feature. One of them had already read it, and she recommended it because she really wanted to reread it, because she said she felt like there were some things maybe she had missed, and she wanted to read it, to get other people's opinions. And I could see why. It's one of those you really want to read with other people. You really want to do a buddy read, because even now I want people to talk about it with. I really want to get other people's thoughts on it. And there's a lot to talk about, because there are layers to it. And before I even get into what it's about, the animals in this do not fare well. It's something that bugs me, it bothers me to read about, but I'm glad I toughed it out through that, because it's not for no reason. It's not for the hell of it. It lends itself to the plot. It's very important to the plot. So it's not, yeah, it was really hard to read, but I'm glad that I toughed it out. It ended up being a 5-star read for me. Also, if you want a book that just hands the plot over on a silver platter, this might not be for you. It doesn't tell you what to think. It doesn't, it kind of lets you draw your own conclusions. And it doesn't just hand it all over. It makes you work for it a little bit. It's kind of a slow burn. It, kind of slowly unravels. And yeah, so just let you know that straight away, and I'll tell you what it's about. A tale of revenge, cultural identity, and the cost of breaking from tradition in this latest novel from the Jordan Peele of horror literature, Stephen Graham Jones. Seamlessly blending classic horror and a dramatic narrative with sharp social commentary, The Only Good Indians follows 4 American Indian men after a disturbing event from their youth puts them in a desperate struggle for their lives. Tracked by an entity bent on revenge, these childhood friends are helpless as the culture and traditions they left behind catch up to them in a violent, vengeful way. Yeah. There is commentary on racism and alcoholism. Yeah, this is a very powerful, layered read. I don't even know how to explain it. It took a little bit for me to get into his writing style, but once I finally figured it out and got into it, I can't get enough of it. I want to read everything he's ever written now. So yeah, I don't even know how to explain it, but it's such a unique way of writing, and he's definitely a storyteller. He has such a unique, intricate way to weave a story, and I'm really into it. And also, I will say that the horror sort of hit out of nowhere. It just wasn't there, and I'm like, where are we going with this? And if it hadn't been for book club, I may have DNF'd it just because, like I said, the animal parts were really hard. But, and also I'm like, where are we going with this? And then boom, the horror hit out of nowhere. Like, oh, there it is. So the first half of it was definitely slower, and then the second half was more gory and violent and all that. I enjoyed learning about the Native American experience. I can't speak of that. I don't, obviously I don't have that experience, but I loved learning about it and the traditions and all of that. There was a lot of commentary on that. This is a story about grief and guilt and revenge, and it was powerful. It packed a punch, let me tell you. There were layers and layers, and I could talk about this book all day and all the meaning behind it, but it would not do it justice. There was just so much to it. And like I said, I would love to talk about this with whoever has read it, because I have a lot to say about it and I have a lot of questions still. But yeah, there was so much to it. And yeah, the second part of it especially, yeah, I just, there's not much I could say, and I don't want to give anything away about it, but it was just really powerful, and I loved it, and I'm obsessed with his writing style, and yeah, it was, I would say, a masterpiece. This book was a masterpiece. It was very raw and gritty and very well done, and the character development and the plot and the pacing, like I said, was slow, but it very much lent itself to the story, and I think was very important to the story. And I think part of the reason why I liked it, I had to work for it a little bit, but it kind of drawing it out a little bit, I think was part of that sense of dread that I felt the whole time, because I had that sense of dread the whole time. I mean, from the very first page all the way on, that sense of dread, like I knew it was coming. I didn't know what was coming, but you could sense that something was coming. And I had that the whole time, and there were parts that gave me chills and goosebumps. And I have goosebumps right now just thinking about it. I'm not kidding. It just, I don't even know how to explain it. It made me feel. And a book that can make you feel, first of all, that's so rare for me. Like I said, I'm kind of desensitized because reading so much horror, you get that way sometimes. But this book made me feel in a very deep way. And that is just so rare. And I know the reviews on this, I've seen people either love it or hate it. I'm in the love it camp because, yeah, I just felt it in such a deep way. And once I got used to the writing style, and I don't mind that it made me work for it. And if you can push through the animal parts, and you could push through and you don't mind working for it a little bit, and you could read, and you're okay kind of picking up on the clues, and you want a book that makes you think, pick it up, because I don't think you'll be sorry if you like that sort of thing. It was so good. So yeah, those are all the books. I only read 5, but yeah, some of them packed a punch, and I really enjoyed all of them. There weren't any bad books here. They were good, and I really enjoyed all of them. Had a good time. May was fun. I think June's going to be a good time too. I'm going to read a little bit more, and still catching up on books authors and publishers have sent me. I don't plan on taking a lot more except for special circumstances, because I want to focus on other things. But anyways, I will see you next Friday. I don't know what it's going to be yet. I haven't decided. I have a couple things in the works. But we'll see. Either way, I will see you next Friday. Bye for now.